Hello and welcome to Talkin' Country. I'm your host, Bob Robbins. The third episode of Ken Burns' documentary, Country Music, focuses on bluegrass and the rise of Hank Williams. Here to discuss these and other topics surrounding country music with me are Tim Crouch, acoustic musician, Charley Sandage, a songwriter, Charles Haynes, veteran country music journalist and historian, and John Rainey, chief engineer at Rainey Recording Studio. We went back tonight to the late 40s, early 50s. The war's over. The new sound, it's starting to show up. And oh boy, they called him the Hillbilly Shakespeare. Of course, we're talking about Hank Williams Sr. from Alabama. He started making the scene. And as we remember the show, we're going to start with Hank, although the episode tonight ended with Hank. And in my eyes, I see Hank Jr. I, of course, was just a little boy, but I remember all those songs. And I remember my mother singing those songs, and I remember throughout my life and career hearing those songs a lot of times in a lot of places and still hear them today. What did you think?
Man, I thought it was good. I think about the songs that Hank Williams, done that touched folks, and they were real stories. They was the stories of what was happening at the time, and watching that about his music coming to life, that style of music, that was a special time in country music.
Well, they said, the man writes from his heart, and indeed he did.
Yeah.
What do you think, Charles?
Oh, I totally agree. And you could tell when things were happy in his life, he had those more upbeat honky-tonk songs, and when he was hitting tough times, here came I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, and You Win Again, and I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive, and those type of things.
The man wrote so many songs. Well, they say he cut 82 of them, like in 1952. Was it that many? Was it quite a bit?
Incredible amount
and
of
basically
recording.
half a year, I think.
Right. Yeah, half of a year.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the grueling pace that his life took? Of course, he was not a healthy man to begin with, and I can't really see how they can push themselves to do like they do. Can you?
It was in him to write, but I think there was another thing about Hank. He was responding to an audience that appreciated what he did, and he became driven to keep feeding that audience.
Right.
I think a thing that he did that was not done before, if you hang around Nashville songwriters and if you go to the workshops, if you're a wannabe songwriter, they talk about the craft. And in a lot of ways, I think Hank sort of, I'm not going to say invented the idea of being a craftsman who writes songs, but he sure did set the standards for that. Knowing what would sell, knowing how to do little musical things that would grab attention at the beginning of a song, knowing how to get a whole lot said in a very short phrase. He sort of created, in my view, the standards that today's people referred to as the craft of songwriting.
Well, like you said, he held the pen and God sent the message through. Pretty powerful statement.
And which works if your craft is up to where it should be, right. Then you can capture that. And he worked at it. He worked at it all the time.
Yeah. Do you think he really knew that he had the craft, John?
Oh, people that have that kind of talent, they're usually pretty humble, and I don't think you could say it any better than what they said in the documentary, 3 chords and the truth. He absolutely did that.
And it amazes me how these people can write songs. I think back to a time when my friend Roger Miller was in town for the Arkansas State Fair Rodeo, and he and I hung out a whole lot, and one night he said, "Bob, you're down around Valdosta way, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How much does it cost to Valdosta? How much for half of the way? Lord, I'm tired and I'm hungry and I ain't got no money. Now, what would my mama say? I could never do that. Could you do?
No.
Charles,
No.
could you?
No,
How about you?
No, I probably couldn't.
Me neither.
Not that.
But those people that do that have a talent, and Hank had
Yeah.
that talent.
Absolutely.
And he
Kinda
knew
like
how to. when he
Charlie
opened
said,
it.
he really set the standard for being a songwriter that could craft a song with a small idea and then expand it into a story, you know?
Exactly.
And he really set the standard for that.
Well, he's like Jimmy Rogers. He never could read a note of music.
Right.
You
Which
know.
is God-given.
But I would guarantee you this, that there would have been very, very few moments, whatever he was doing, even half asleep, half awake, whatever, there was very little time when something wasn't running in the back of his head.
Right.
He was writing every minute of every day.
If you threw him a line, he could put a tune to
He
it.
probably had something that he had thought of.
Yeah. Well, of course, there's a lot more than Hank to talk about in this episode tonight, and we'll get to them too. But I was really impressed with all the footage and the photos and all that they had of Hank Sr. And, of course, even the fact that Hank Jr. was on there talking about his daddy, too. Ernest Tubb, the old Texas troubadour. Got to see him in his early days tonight.
Yeah, boy, he's in the band he had, and he was such a pivotal part on the Grand Ole Opry, and he knew that. As you notice how they talked about there, they would go out and do their road shows, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they always made it back to be on the Grand Ole Opry on the weekends.
That Grand Ole Opry was that was a necessity if you
Absolutely.
were lucky enough to be on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You ever been on the Grand Ole Opry?
I have.
There you go.
I have. Ernest Tubb, like they was talking about, was not that good a singer. Even
No, he
according
even said so himself.
Yeah. So it goes to prove you don't have to be the best singer.
That's right. Well, people loved his music, and I
Yeah.
guess that electric guitar.
Yeah, and he had a feel about the way he delivered a song.
Yeah.
His songs was like Hank Williams, or not like Hank's, but he had his own thing, but similar in that he told a story, and he could deliver that story with a song. He had a feel about his music, and I liked it anyway.
Yeah, same here. You think about songs like "Walking the Floor Over You" and "Waltz Across Texas." They're standards.
Yeah, and all the musicians that came through that
Oh,
band.
Jack Green.
Yeah, and Buddy Emmons on the
what
steel.
a great talent.
Yeah, Leon Rhodes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think we get to see Jack Green a little later on, too,
Yeah.
and that's good. I think that all songwriters and performers, even they want to be songwriters, don't they?
Yeah.
Now, you played with Alan Jackson and some other folks.
Mhm.
I guess that's when you were on the Grand Ole Opry, huh?
I have.
Or were you telling jokes?
I should have been telling jokes. I'd have been better off, But yeah, those guys that are songwriters, like Hank, you was talking about that. This fella came to my house not too awful long ago. He's from Australia, and he's a country music singer. And when he got to my house, it was kind of late in the afternoon, and it was getting dark, and the whippoorwills were starting to cry out. And we sat there on the porch. He wanted to know what that was. And I said, "That's a whippoorwill." And he said, "That's what Hank sang about."
Yeah.
This guy's all the way from Australia
And knew that
and knew what Hank
Knew
Williams
about
had
that,
sang
yeah.
about.
that's pretty, at
That's awesome.
this time in our life.
Yeah, I mean, it goes all over the place. It's not just in America, or touches us locally. That kind of music reaches all the way across, to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
As time moved on in those days, of course, 1947, Ernest and Miss Minnie Pearl, they got together as an act and did a pretty good job in that career as well.
Yeah, they went to Carnegie Hall.
Yeah,
That was
but
huge.
Tell me that wasn't huge. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
1947 for country artists, absolutely.
Does it amaze you that the black influence in music had so much to do with our country music of today?
Absolutely did. There's right now there's a thing going on. Rhiannon Giddens, who was with a group called the Carolina Chocolate Drops, which was a reference to an old-time string band that was black musicians, is kind of evangelizing about that right now. That anything that we identify now as country music, the roots of bluegrass back into old-time string band and so forth, the black musicians were there. The black musicians were doing the same things. They were feeding some of these figures that were featured in the piece with a lot of the material, a lot of the ideas that they were doing.
It's so interesting that so many of our artists were found by those musicians
Absolutely.
and people that sang.
Absolutely.
And it's,
You know,
thank God
speaking of
that
another musician that we're overlooking, Chet Atkins, the Carter family.
hey, tell me.
Brought him forward. Look at the contributions that he brought to Nashville.
Yeah, and look how hard it was for him to ever get into the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't want him.
Yeah.
Because he was so good.
They were afraid that
Well, he
he'd
was
take all their
different.
work.
He was different. And the Carters said, well, we're not coming unless he comes.
Yeah.
So finally they reached a deal, and he came, and look at the success.
Yeah.
It goes to show you being different sometimes ain't all bad, is it?
Not all bad.
That's right. Eddie Arnold, he changed the...
Well, as they said, you know, he was the first crossover artist.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, they call him Tennessee Plow Boy. He was hillbilly in nature and sang those country songs, but boy.
But he didn't want to look that way.
That's right, but man, he had that smooth voice. My goodness.
And that's what he sang about was love.
Oh yeah.
Kind of lose when you sing about love, and as good as he could sing too.
And he could sing.
Yeah.
Tennessee Plowboy, that was what they called him, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why they called him the Tennessee Plowboy when he sang about love. I guess Tennessee Plowboys fall in love too, huh?
I remembered watching the piece. This is a little personal incident. The cattle call.
Yes, sir.
I probably was 6 or 7 the first time I heard that on the radio. And we had a few head of cattle. And I thought, I wonder if that really works. So literally, I went out to the fence and I started singing that with a little sort of yodel there. You know what happened?
Cows came.
They came up.
So it proved your point, didn't it?
Absolutely.
So you knew he wasn't lying to you.
I would say that was an authentic song.
Yeah. I think all those songs were pretty authentic. Youngest of 16 children. So obviously they didn't have television in those days, huh? John?
Woo! I don't know. I might have to leave that one alone.
Yeah. I just can't imagine a lady having 16 children. I know it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Stoneman family had 23.
Exactly. And but I just that's a house full of kids.
Good.
A heck of a grocery bill. But I guess when you have that many, you grow a lot, huh?
Yeah, little Jimmy Dickens used to say his mama was hard of hearing. His daddy would say, "Do you want to go to sleep or what?" And anyway, that's what John was referring
She
to.
never knew the what, did she?
Yeah, speaking of Dickens, there was a great entertainment.
Yeah, ain't it? Yeah.
I was shocked tonight. I never knew that Colonel Tom Parker was promoting acts so far back before Elvis Presley. Of course, everybody knows.
Yeah, he promoted
That
Eddie
Elvis-
Arnold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was news to me.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I wonder if he cut those hot dogs in half, and when they fell out on the ground, like he did, they said with Elvis, sell those hot dogs and stuff.
But one about little Jimmy Dickens, I wonder if anybody had a longer tenure on the Opry than Jimmy Dickens did.
He came
I
there
doubt
in
it.
48, and he was there until he died.
Okay. Yeah. When you think in country and bluegrass, what's the difference? Or is there a difference?
Well, bluegrass is a subgenre, or that became a genre on its own, and it was created out of old-time string band music, which was mainly for dances. But what Bill wanted to do, Bill Monroe, he wanted to move from the dance floor up to the stage. And as came out in the piece, he had something going in his head, and it was different from what old-time string band was. And Earl Scruggs sort of defined that difference in his banjo style. It had the drive, it had the energy, it had the pop, it had the feel, And that's what he was after all the time. And he rebranded a whole new genre that had not existed before in that form. So it was a whole other thing, a whole new thing.
And what blows me away is how bluegrass music has so many different styles of bluegrass music.
Now, to begin with, and Tim is the best person to talk about this, to begin with, it needed to sound like those guys, those original guys. Now it has so many variants and new directions.
Well, it's like country music has too. You know,
Yeah.
it's expanded its boundaries. You know, to where it's done with even where they've added drums or added other instruments to bluegrass, which
Electric instruments.
yeah, it would have been a no-no back in '46.
Yeah, you
know?
could have never heard it.
No. So, but look at what all bluegrass has spun off, even from Bill Monroe's time of Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs.
Right.
You know, there became a whole new thing. Jimmy Martin, who was in Bill Monroe's band, Mac Wiseman.
Yep.
You know, it
That's
goes
it.
on and on of the people who came through there and got their schooling, from Bill Monroe and then went on and become their own thing. I mean, it happened to so many singers, mainly guitar players that were lead singers that went on to form their own bands a lot of times. But Flatt and Scruggs was they was a force now.
Yeah,
when
I
they-
found it interesting,
yeah.
all the feuding going on
Yeah.
between them and Stanley's. It's pretty interesting.
Monroe may have created it. Flatt and Scruggs took it to another level.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about in the '60s and being on national television on the Beverly Hillbillies and just the popularity they got. I mean,
Yeah. Pig or a banjo.
I'd be curious
What a
if you guys agree with the notion that I have about the popularity of bluegrass. It was a style that people out there who played could learn to a degree, and they might not ever get to Scruggs' level, but they could do it.
right? Don't have to have amplifiers.
And they could start to sound
Yeah.
like that. And so what happened is you had people on the porch playing it, learning to play that style. That evolves into this idea. You can throw a festival, and you might be able to get a headliner to come in, but then you could fill out the whole rest of the weekend with 15 or 20 area bands that were playing like that. And so the festival thing and the fact that it could be done on the front porch, I think had as much to do with the spread of the popularity of bluegrass
Oh, yeah.
as some of these names.
And a couple other popular groups I can remember in the '60s and '70s that we haven't mentioned, from the Grand Ole Opry, Jim and Jesse, the Osborne brothers.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
they continued that popularity.
And they, of course, talking about that front porch, I can think back to when you would have religious services at people's houses out in the country because, you didn't have time to do them everywhere else, but they'd hold revivals at people's houses on their front porches, and they would have the gospel music that we've been listening to for the last 2 episodes and some in this one that was played then that we were talking about.
Right.
Mr. Nudie. I always wanted a pair of nudie boots. Never could afford them. But I didn't realize until we were watching this that Mr. Nudie made those suits too, the nudie suits.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very talented.
Well, it was a time frame where performers, they wanted to look like stars when they were introduced and walked out on stage. I mean, I know growing up for me, I watched like the Porter Wagoner show, but as you know, you can go way back. People were wearing those way before Porter Wagoner. you
Yeah.
know.
But Porter also, in that particular time, Porter put those suits forward that
Oh,
people,
yeah.
we laughed at them sometimes, and a lot of people didn't. A lot of people thought they were beautiful.
That came in with the Western identity of country and Western,
Right.
the Western part. But it went beyond any of the country performers who even were not remotely Western in their style, and it became the style for any country folk for a long time. I mean, we're moving away from that now, but it was sort of where the Western half took over as far as the look was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I know when you go to a show and you're sitting there and you see the star walk out, they're always a little different in the clothing that they wear or the things they do on stage that makes them stand apart. I personally think that's a good idea.
Yeah, me too.
We were talking about Maybelle Carter and her 3 daughters, and of course Chet Atkins. If it hadn't been for them, like we'd said earlier, Mr. Atkins might not have never been. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, thank God he was, though.
I think that the mother part of Mother Maybelle started off in terms of her identity within that family, but reputation-wise, I think Mother Maybelle was basically Nashville's mother. Hank wasn't the only one who went and confided in her and she supported and so forth. Johnny Cash certainly, and that's not the end of the list.
Yeah. Of course, WSM, the power to bring that radio show still to this day.
Oh, that's the show everybody wanted to be on.
Yeah.
I mean, they may be
And
on
they
different
still do. I love that. They
Absolutely,
still do. No, the team.
Oh, they do, yeah. Musicians, in country, bluegrass, all that kind of field folk music, that's a lot of them's dream is just to get to play one note, just to get to go out and play on the Grand Ole Opry one time. That's a real goal for a lot of musicians.
That
and
circle
singers.
is a mighty treasured circle.
Yeah.
I was thinking a minute ago, Tim, that you personally, more than any of the rest of us sitting here, you've experienced that going on the road with bluegrass groups and whatever.
Yeah.
And you know a little bit about that grind.
I do. I played with Jim and Jesse when I was 19 years old, and my tryout was on the Grand Ole Opry.
Wow.
That was my time to go see if I could cut the gig or not.
I guess you made it. Huh?
Well, I did for a little while, but Jesse called me and he said we're needing a fiddle player, so can you come to Nashville? And I didn't even have a car that would get to Nashville from Strawberry, so my mom put me on a Greyhound bus. I was 19 years old. I took a Greyhound bus to Nashville, and they picked me up, and we went out to Grand Ole Opry, and we played, and went out and played. And when we did, Roy Acuff knew that I was brand new. I was the new fiddle player trying out, So he made sure they got an encore, so we had to go back out and play.
That's
and
neat.
when we did, we went back out, and he said, I want to hear this, and he called me Couch. I want to hear this Couch boy play the fiddle. Said, I want to hear him play Sally Gooden. Well, you're going to play Sally Gooden if that's what Roy Acuff wants.
I promise
So
you.
we played Sally Gooden, and right towards the end of it, I broke a string on the Grand Ole Opry. Bridge went crazy. You couldn't hear the fiddle. It just fell apart. I thought, well, that's it. I mean, if you can imagine being nervous enough about playing there for the first time, and then you break a string, I thought, well, I'm getting on that bus and going back to Strawberry. That's the end of that old deal. But we walked back there, and I was putting a string on my fiddle, and Jesse said, well, we're playing here tomorrow night. Said, come on back, you play here, you got the job.
Oh, that's
So,
good.
yeah, I played with them for a couple of years, and they played bluegrass festivals,
Right.
just wide open. They were the best gentlemen.
Yeah.
On top of being good singers and musicians and all, they were just real gentlemen. And that whole bluegrass community is
That's
like
the way
that.
they are. That's true.
It's like a big family.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten to know both of them. I remember when Jim passed away. Of course, Jesse's still out there doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fellas, we're down to the end just about, so we're going to have to wrap it up. As much fun as we're having sitting here chit-chatting about this show tonight. Charles?
Well,
Your final opinion.
I'm ready for the next one. I
Yeah.
mean, we're getting ready to. I guess we're getting ready to move into Sun Records and Johnny and Elvis
Yeah.
and more changes.
Couch?
Yeah, Couch, I'm ready to see some
Mr.
more.
Acuff can call you Couch.
Yeah,
we call you
I'll
Couch.
answer to anything as long as there's a check.
Yeah.
But,
I don't have one of those.
No, that's all right. But yeah, I look forward to seeing the rest of it. I mean, this episode was really good, and it's going to be good to watch all of it.
John?
I learned a lot about some of the things in that documentary that I just didn't know. I didn't realize that Hank had as many health problems as he did.
I didn't either.
I just didn't know.
Although I knew he had a lot.
Yeah, I just thought he had, an alcohol problem. But gosh, the way he pushed himself to do all the things he did, and all the legacy that he left behind in his music, it was really striking to me how much he had done.
First off, hey, it's Ken Burns, doing this work.
It's beautiful.
So
isn't
it's going to be beautiful stuff. It certainly will be. No, I'm ready for the next episode.
Well, talking country, that's what I do all the time, and I sure do love it. And we love you being a part of Talking Country here on this program after these shows each night. And thank you for watching. We hope you'll be back with us tomorrow night, and we'll be talking country again with you right here